Cheese making kit. Make 20 different cheeses. Cheese Monkey. 1. Congratulations on choosing Cheese Monkey to be your guide. The 20 cheeses in this book and the accompanying cheese making kit have been designed to give you a taste of the variety of cheeses that can be easily made at home. We've selected recipes to illustrate different techniques and to show you the role each ingredient plays in the process of cheese making. Have fun. So you want to be a cheese maker. 3. Our recipes are all about having fun and eating the results. Make sure you read the cheesemaker's tips on the next few pages to understand the basic processes, then just dive into the recipes. Everything you need is included in the cheese making kit, except for basic bits of equipment which hopefully you'll have in your kitchen already: saucepans, spoons and colanders, etc. When making cheese, the process is very sensitive to temperatures, timings and ingredients. Even using milk from the same cow will make a different tasting cheese at different times of the year. Remember, even if things don't go exactly how you planned, you will still end up with a cheese, just not necessarily the cheese you were intending to make. Introduction. The cheese recipes. Brunest. 28. Burrata. 13. Quina. 32. Creamy Cheshire. 38. Feta. 30. Goat's cheese. 26. Halloumi. 18. Labneh. 22. Marbled porter. 42. Mascarpone. 16. Mozzarella. 12. Pania. 32. Quark. 41. Queso Blanco. 40. Queso Fresco. 24. Quick cottage cheese. 20. Ricotta. 14. Ricotta salata. 15. Rouli cheese. 36. Scottish Crowdie. 34. Okay, so you're keen to get started. There are 20 cheeses in this book. We hope you make them all, but which recipe to try first? To start, 4 cheeses that are good to start with are mozzarella, ricotta, mascarpone and creamy Cheshire. They are easy to make and give you a good feel for different techniques. Moving on. Halloumi and feta are interesting ones. When making halloumi, aim for that distinctive squeak when you bite it. With feta, try experimenting with different levels of saltiness. Something a bit different. The recipes for Brunest and marbled porter are for the adventurous cheesemaker. Best recipe for kids. With supervision, kids love the hands-on experience of making mozzarella. Or maybe make some mascarpone with them. Kids love mascarpone sweetened with icing sugar and eaten with raspberries. 5. Every recipe in this book is different, but there are methods and techniques that are used throughout. Which milk? Some of the recipes work best with a certain type of milk, skimmed or whole milk, but generally, most milks from most shops will work. Except UHT milk. The fresher the milk the better. If you can get non-homogenized milk, then that works best for melting cheeses. Mozzarella, the converse is true for non-melting cheeses. Panna. Halloumi, which are best when made with homogenized milk. Don't worry too much if a recipe doesn't make the cheese exactly as you were expecting. Eat it anyway and try a different milk the next time. Rennet. The rennet in Cheese Monkey kits is vegetarian. Store it somewhere cool, and then in the fridge after you've opened a tablet. When you dissolve rennet, use a clear glass so you can clearly see how well dissolved it is. Once you've dissolved a tablet, then use within 30 minutes. If the recipe asks you to dissolve a quarter tablet but only use half the solution, then discard the unused half. If rennet is heated above 40°C, it can be destroyed, so watch the temperature carefully. Yogurt and buttermilk. If the recipe uses yogurt or buttermilk, then use a cultured or live variety without any thickening agents. Use a newly opened carton. Stronger curds. The curds will start to form as soon as you add the rennet to the milk. Give it a quick stir and then leave the milk undisturbed for stronger curds. If the rennet isn't fully distributed, then you will get a low yield. But if you stir it for too long, then you will get a very weak curd. Cutting curds. To test if your curds are ready, then use a knife to see if they make a clean cut and remain separate from the yellowish whey. To cut curds, use a knife that reaches to the bottom of the pan. Firstly, make parallel cuts at the width given in the recipe, then make parallel cuts perpendicular to those. Finally, use the knife at an angle to get cubes of curd. Try and keep the lines nice and even so the curds aren't broken up. Cheesemaker's tips. Cutting curds. 7. Pressing cheese. When you press the cheese, it's best to gradually increase the pressure. One way to press a cheese is to find a jar or bottle that fits inside the cheese mold and then keep adding more water to increase the weight during the pressing. It can sometimes be a bit tricky to get it to balance. Hanging the cheesecloth. Some of the recipes ask you to gather up the curds in the cheesecloth and hang them to drain. An easy way to do this is to tie some string around the cloth and then hang it from a wooden spoon balanced across the top of a bowl or jug. The hanging curds can then be kept in the fridge for longer periods of time. Quantities. The yield depends on the milk you use, but generally expect around 20% cheese from your milk. So for a 2L batch of milk, then you'll get 400 g of cheese. You can increase/decrease the quantities in any of hygiene. When you're making a cheese, you are creating ideal conditions for bacteria to grow. It is important that all kitchen surfaces and any equipment is very clean. We recommend using boiling water to sterilize everything before starting. The longer a cheese stays out of the fridge, the more careful you need to be with cleanliness. Increasing the amount of salt helps to preserve the cheese, but it needs to be quite a high percentage before it truly preserves a cheese. The recipes proportionally, but smaller quantities heat up and cool down faster, so watch the temperatures more closely. Adjusting the quantities of individual ingredients is a good way to learn about cheese making. Adjusting salt and rennet will give different textures of cheese. More cheesemakers tips. 9. 11. You will need equipment: saucepan, draining spoon, thermometer, long knife, cheesecloth, colander, microwavable bowl. Ingredients: 4 liters milk, 1/4 tablet rennet, 1½ teaspoon citric acid, 1 teaspoon cheese salt. Making mozzarella. 1. Prepare citric acid and rennet. Dissolve acid in 250 ml water and separately stir rennet tablet in 60 ml of water until dissolved. 2. Warm milk. Add citric acid solution to milk and heat gently whilst stirring until it reaches 320 C. Immediately take off heat. 3. Making curds. Add rennet solution to milk and stir for 30 s, then replace lid and leave undisturbed for 5 minutes. The curds should have formed. Check if they cut cleanly, if not wait and try again. 4. Cutting the curds. Make parallel cuts 3 cm apart, then again in a perpendicular direction to form a grid. Ensure the knife touches the base of the pan. Next, use the knife to make horizontal cuts. You should now have fairly even cubes of curd. 5. Cooking the curds. Heat gently to 410 C. Stir constantly and slowly, trying not to break up the curds. Immediately remove from the heat and continue to gently stir for a further 5 minutes. 6. Separating curds and whey. Scoop curds into muslin-lined colander and let drip dry for 5 minutes. You can keep the whey for later use. Mozzarella and burrata. Mozzarella. Burrata. 7. Finishing the cheese. Use one of the 2 following methods. A. Microwave method. Place curds in a microwave-safe container. Heat on full power for 1 minute. Fold curds and drain any excess whey. Keep heating in 30-second bursts until internal temperature reaches 560 C. NB. Be careful not to overheat cheese. Then step 8. B. Hot water method. Place curds in a large bowl of very hot water. 700 C. Leave until it resembles melted cheese and can easily be stretched. It should drip off a spoon when hot enough. 8. Shaping mozzarella. Add salt to taste, then gently fold and stretch the curds until they are shiny. Form into balls. If the curds become too hard to work, reheat, in microwave or in hot water. Cool the balls as soon as they are formed. Making burrata. A. Follow the mozzarella recipe as far as the end of stage 6, separating curds and whey. B. Take approx 1/3 of the mozzarella curds. Mix with half a teaspoon salt and 2 tablespoon heavy, full-fat cream. It should resemble a thick cottage cheese texture when mixed. C. With the remaining 2/3 of the mozzarella curds, follow the instruction for finishing the cheese, stage 7. D. Instead of shaping the mozzarella into a ball, stretch it out into a flat sheet. This needs to be done whilst it is still warm, and it should be smooth and shiny. E. Take the burrata mixture from stage B above, and place it into the middle of the mozzarella sheet, then bundle it up by pulling the sheet up and around it, then pinch forward/twist the mozzarella to seal it over the burrata mixture. F. Once you've sealed and shaped the cheese, then drop it into salted, ice-cold water to set it. Don't store it like this, take it out after 10 minutes. Extra information. Types of milk. The best milk to use is whole milk, however most types of milk will work: regular, skimmed, buffalo, however UHT milk will not work. Melting mozzarella, non-homogenized full-fat milk is best. If your cheese doesn't melt well, then you might have overworked it or overheated the curds, forcing out too much fat. Keeping your mozzarella, it's best eaten fresh but can be kept in sealed box in fridge for 1 to 2 days or frozen. Grating cheese. If you want to grate your fresh mozzarella, then you might find it easier if you pop it into the freezer first. Quantities. Recipes can be scaled up/down, but be careful not to overheat small quantities in microwave. 13. You will need equipment: saucepan, draining spoon, thermometer, cheese cloth, strainer/colander. Ingredients: 2 L whole milk, 1 teaspoon citric acid, half a teaspoon cheese salt. Making ricotta. 1. Acidify the milk. Dissolve citric acid in 125 ml cold water. Combine half of this with the milk in a saucepan. Stir. Add salt. 2. Warm milk. Whilst constantly stirring, heat milk to 760 C. Small flakes of curd should begin to form. If not, add more citric acid solution 1 spoonful at a time until they do. Use caution: adding excess acid could lead to a sour-tasting cheese. 3. Continue heating, whilst taking care not to scald the milk. Heat to 90 C, then turn off heat. 4. Forming curds. As the curds rise to the surface, use the slotted spoon to move them to the center of the pan. They should coalesce into a larger mass. Allow them to rest in the liquid for 10 to 15 minutes. 5. Draining the curds. Ladle/spoon the curds into a colander lined with the cheesecloth. Allow to drain for 10 minutes or until the whey ceases to drip freely. The longer you leave it, the creamier the ricotta will become. Drain for several hours for a dense, spreadable cheese. Mozzarella and burrata. Ricotta. Ricotta salata. 6. Chill and eat. Or proceed with the second recipe. Making ricotta salata. Ricotta salata is a salted ricotta that is firm enough to grate. It can be made from the ricotta you prepared in the first recipe. Ricotta salata is an aged cheese, so ensure all equipment is sterile or very clean. 1. Drain. Tie your ricotta up in a cheesecloth and allow to drain for a few hours. Place the tied up cheese onto a dish and carefully balance weight on top. A full jam jar is about the right weight. 2. Press. Turn the cheese over after 1 hour. Replace the weight. Then press for a further 12 hours. Drain any whey that is released. 3. Salting. Lightly rub table salt over the surface of the cheese and place on a rack in your fridge. Every day for 5 days, resalt and turn the cheese. 4. Maturing. Age the cheese for 2 to 4 weeks in your fridge. If any mold forms on the surface, remove with a clean cloth and salted water. Ricotta salata can be eaten at any point from the first pressing forward/salting, but the longer you leave, the harder and more flavorful it becomes. Extra information. Quantities. If you want to make more forward/less cheese, just adjust the ingredients proportionally. Cleanliness. Keeping your cheese-making equipment clean is important, but especially so when making an aged cheese such as ricotta salata. Sterilize any equipment with boiling water or a chemical such as Milton's salt. With both cheeses, more salt will make a drier cheese. Salting cheese. Salt does different things to the cheese depending upon when it is added. Drying. adding salt to curds extracts water, giving a drier cheese. If you add it early, then most of the salt will be washed away, so it won't really affect the flavor. Preserving. Towards the end of the process, salt sprinkled over the surface or used in brine will help to preserve the cheese. However, in order to truly preserve cheese, lots of salt is needed. 15. You will need equipment: saucepan, thermometer, cheesecloth, colander. Ingredients: 500 ml double cream, 500 ml full-fat milk, 1/4 teaspoon citric acid. Making mascarpone. 1. Prepare acid. Dissolve citric acid in 60 ml of cold water. 2. Heat. Combine milk and cream and heat to 850 C. Be careful not to burn the mixture onto the bottom of the pan. Remove from the cooker when the temperature is reached. 3. Curdle the milk. Drizzle the acid solution over the surface of the hot mixture and stir for a few seconds, making sure that the acid is thoroughly mixed with the milk and cream. The curds should start to form immediately, but they won't be firm gelatinous curds like with other cheeses. Instead, expect a curdled flocculation of curds and whey. 4. Wait. Leave the curds and whey undisturbed for 30 minutes. This allows them to complete their coagulation. 5. Strain, spoon or pour the mixture into a colander that has been lined with the cheesecloth and allow to drain. 6. Hang. Take the edges of the cheesecloth, gather and tie with string. Hang up the cheesecloth somewhere cool or in the fridge over a bowl. If you don't have somewhere suitable to hang it, you can tie it. Mascarpone. To a spoon over a bowl /jug. After 2 hours, open up the cloth and you will have a loose mascarpone. It can be used now, but to get thicker, creamier mascarpone, do the following: use a spoon and scrape away the cheese from the edge of the cloth, mixing it with the looser mascarpone in the middle and tie up to continue draining. You can leave draining in a fridge for up to 12 hours for a thicker texture. 7. Eat. This is a fresh cheese and has no salt to preserve it, so is best eaten straight away, but it can be kept in the fridge for a few days. Extra information. Scalding. To prevent scalding, you can set up a double boiler by placing a bowl large enough for the milk and cream over a pan of water. Then boil the pan of water and allow the steam to heat the milk and cream. How to serve. Keep it simple. Sweeten the mascarpone with icing sugar and serve with mixed berries or spoon over ice cream. Posh trifle. Whip mascarpone, liqueur, sugar and cream, then smother over coffee-soaked biscuits. Dust with cocoa powder. Be very careful not to inhale cocoa powder when eating your tiramisu. 17. You will need equipment: cheesecloth, large pan with lid, knife, slotted spoon, colander, thermometer, mixing bowl. Ingredients: 4 milk, full fat, homogenized, 1/4 rennet tablet, 2 to 3 teaspoons salt, mint. Making halloumi. 1. Dissolve rennet in 60 ml of cold water. Make sure it is fully dissolved. 2. Heat milk to 320 C. Stir occasional to stop it burning on base. 3. Water bath. In your sink, mix hot and cold water to achieve 320 C. When the milk has reached 32 degrees, then place the pan into the water bath. If the milk has gone slightly over 320 C, then allow it to cool before proceeding. 4. Forming curds. Gently, but quickly stir the rennet into the milk. Halloumi relies upon strong curds, so make sure you've read the section on forming curds. 5. Wait, leave the milk in the water bath for 45 minutes. Keep an eye on the temperature of the water bath, topping up with hot water if needed. Be careful not to disturb the milk. 6. Cutting, after 45 minutes, check the curds, they should have set. If they haven't, then just give them a bit more time. Cut the curds into halloumi 1.5 cm cubes. With the pan still in the water bath, leave the curds for 5 minutes to start firming up. 7. Cooking curds, transfer the pan to a stove and heat to 400 C. Using a low heat, this should take approximate 15 minutes. After 5 minutes of heating, start to stir the curds, being very gentle and trying not to break them up. Make sure you reach the spoon all the way to the bottom of the pan. When the temperature is reached, switch off the heat and let the curds cook for another 10 minutes. They should contract as they cook. 8. Collect the whey. In this stage, don't forget to collect the whey. Line a colander with a cheesecloth and place it in a large bowl to collect the whey. You'll need to use all of the whey you collect in the next stage. Gently lift the curds into the cheesecloth using a spoon or ladle. 9. Turn, let the curds drain for an hour, turning over halfway through. During this time, as well as the curds draining, they will coalesce into a single mass. 10. Heat the whey to 93° C. Any remaining fragments of curd will float to the surface. Skim and discard these. 11. Cut the single large curd into 10 equal-sized pieces and gently lower them into the hot whey. 12. Boil, keep heating the whey until it boils, then turn off the heat and cook the curds in the whey for 20 minutes. 13. Cool, remove the curds and dunk for a few seconds into cold water to stop the cooking and speed up cooling. Then transfer to a cooling rack and pat dry. 14. Salt, sprinkle the pieces of cheese with the salt, trying to cover each piece of cheese equally on all sides. 15. Eat, the cheese is ready to eat as soon as it is cooled, but it will improve after a day because two things happen. Firstly, the salt will diffuse into the cheese, and secondly, water will evaporate from the surface, leaving it slightly drier, so it will brown better when cooked. For a drier cheese, then don't cover the cheese for the first day in the fridge. For a moister halloumi, use a covered container. 16. Keep, halloumi is a fresh cheese, so it should be stored in an air-tight container in the fridge and eaten within 5 days. Extra information. Be patient, no acid is added to the milk and no starter is used to acidify the milk at the beginning. Because of this, then the rennet will work more slowly than with other cheeses. Be patient, it might take as long as an hour before curds fully form. For the same reason, the temperature is more important than with other cheese recipes. Hence the water bath. 19. Quick cottage cheese. You will need equipment: saucepan, thermometer, colander, cheesecloth. Ingredients: 2 L milk, half a teaspoon citric acid, 1/8 tablet rennet, half a teaspoon salt. Optional: 2 tablespoon double cream. Making cottage cheese. 1. Dissolve citric acid in 50 ml water. 2. Heat milk to 32° C and remove from heat. 3. Add the citric acid and stir. 4. Leave for 3 minutes. 5. Dissolve a quarter rennet tablet in water. Drizzle half of this over the surface face of the milk and stir gently for 2 seconds. Discard the remaining half of the rennet solution. 6. Return the pan to the heat and warm to 400 C. 7. Remove from the heat and leave undisturbed for 40 minutes. 8. Cut the curd into 1 cm cubes. 9. Leave for 5 minutes. 10. Dilute whey. Use a ladle to remove as much whey as possible, whilst being careful not to break up the curds. Replace the whey with water. Repeat taking away the liquid and replacing with water. 11. Heat the pan to 560 C. 12. Remove from heat and leave undisturbed for 20 minutes. 13. Spoon the curds into a cloth-lined colander and allow to drain until most of the liquid has been removed. 14. Sprinkle half a teaspoon of salt over the surface of the curds. Use a spoon to gently break up the curds and allow a few more minutes of draining. 15. Transfer the cottage cheese into a bowl and break up the curds. 16. Creamy cottage cheese, optional, add 2 tablespoons of double cream. Extra information. Chives. Cottage cheese is not complete without an enthusiastic dose of fresh chives. Just chop, sprinkle and mix. A bit of history. Traditionally, cottage cheese was a way of using up milk that was past its prime. When milk had started to spoil, it was placed next to a fire to collect more bacteria and encourage the process. As the milk goes off, it becomes acidic, causing the separation of the curds and whey. The curds would be kept, rinsed and dried to make a crumbly cottage cheese. Our quick cottage cheese method should hopefully give a much creamier and more consistent results. Fat or not, this recipe works with both full-fat and low-fat milk, so try both and see which you prefer. The cottage cheese will be drier if skimmed milk is used. 21. Labneh. You will need equipment: cheesecloth, colander, mixing bowl. Ingredients: 500 g of natural yogurt. For best results you want a full-fat, live yogurt that contains no thickening agents. 1 teaspoon salt. Optional, 1 teaspoon mint. Making labneh. 1. Sterilize the cheesecloth in boiling water for a few minutes. 2. Line a colander with the cloth and place it over a bowl to catch the whey. 3. Combine. Put the salt and yogurt into the cloth. You can add mint or other flavors to the labneh, but we suggest trying it unflavored the first time. Mix. 4. Gather the corners of the cheesecloth and tie together. 5. Hang the cloth over a bowl at room temperature. The longer you hang the labneh, the firmer and more flavorsome it will become. After 24 hours you will have a fine spreadable labneh, and after 48 hours it should be firm enough to shape into balls. 6. Eat. The labneh is ready to eat immediately but can be shaped into balls and then placed in a wide-necked jar. Then submerge in olive oil. This is the traditional way to keep labneh, and as long as it is fully covered in oil and refrigerated, it will last for a few months. Like this. Alternatively, just cover, refrigerate and consume within 5 days. Extra information. Flavor. Just about anything works as a flavor. We like using a touch of garlic. 23. Queso fresco. Fresh cheese with a soft, open texture tastes great with honey or sweet fruits. You will need equipment: colander, thermometer, cheesecloth, saucepan. Cheese mold. Ingredients: 2 L whole milk, 1 L buttermilk, a quarter tablet rennet, a quarter of a teaspoon citric acid. Making queso fresco. 1 rennet, in a glass, dissolve a quarter tablet rennet in 60 ml cold water. 2 acid, dissolve a quarter of a teaspoon of citric acid in 50 ml cold water. 3 combine milk and buttermilk in a pan. Heat to 320 C. 4 acidify, stir in the citric acid and allow to stand for 5 minutes. 5 drizzle the rennet solution over the surface and stir gently for a few seconds. 6 wait, leave to stand undisturbed for 30 minutes. 7 cut the curds into 2.5 cm cubes and allow to stand for 5 minutes. 8 cook, slowly bring the temperature of the curds and whey up to 40 C and keep at this heat without stirring for 20 minutes. Switch off the heat and allow the curds to settle. 9 drain, tip into a colander lined with the cheesecloth and allow to drain for 10 minutes. Then gently squeeze the cheesecloth. 10 salt, break up the curds and sprinkle 1 teaspoon of salt over the curds. The salt will cause more whey to come out of the curds. Twist the cheesecloth to squeeze out more whey. 11 more salt, if you're going to use this cheese with honey or fruit, then don't add any more salt, just go straight to the next step. However, if you intend to use with salad or as a savory cheese, open up the cloth, break up the curds and sprinkle 1 or 2 teaspoons of salt onto the broken curds. Using 1 teaspoon salt is standard for a savory queso fresco. If you add the second teaspoon of salt, you'll get a very salty cheese which works well eaten as snack with a cold beer. 12 wrap the curds back in the cloth, place in the cheese mold and place a weight on top. 13 press for an hour or 2. 14 eat. The cheese is best eaten immediately but will keep for a few days covered in the fridge. Extra information. Flavor: you can add chili and fresh herbs when you add the second lot of salt. 25. Goat's cheese. You will need equipment: saucepan, draining spoon, thermometer, cheese cloth, strainer /colander. Ingredients: 2 fresh goat's milk, 1 teaspoon citric acid, 1 teaspoon cheese salt, 1 teaspoon herbes de Provence. Making goat's cheese. 1 dissolve acid, add citric acid to 125 ml water. Stir to dissolve. 2 heat milk, add citric acid solution to the milk and heat gently. Keep constantly stirring to prevent the milk from catching on the bottom. Stop heating at 850 C and take off the heat. 3 forming curds, take the pan off the heat and leave to stand for 10 to 15 minutes. You should see curds and whey forming. The curds will be much smaller than when making cheese with cow's milk. 4 draining curds and whey, line a colander with the cheesecloth and pour in the contents of the saucepan. Keep the whey as it drains. Draining can take over an hour. NB, if no curds are caught in the cloth, return the milk to the saucepan, add more citric acid, a half teaspoon, reheat and then drain through a double layer of cheesecloth. 5 salt and flavor. When the whey has drained, sprinkle the salt over the curds and mix in. You can also add flavoring at this point. Many flavors work well with goat's cheese. Try chili flakes, fennel, fresh chives or whatever takes your fancy. 6 shaping. Place the cheesecloth onto a flat surface and spoon the cheese along the center. Roll the cloth to form the cheese into a sausage shape. Carefully unwrap your cheese and sprinkle the herbs over the surface. 7 eat. your fresh cheese is ready to eat straight away but will last for a few days in the fridge. The more salt you add, the longer it lasts, up to 1 week. Extra information. Curds: don't panic if you can't see the curds, they should still be caught by the cloth. If not, reheat, add more acid, use a double layer of cheesecloth to drain milk. Any type of goat's milk will work for this recipe except for UHT treated milk. Goat's cheese can be used with a sweet or savory ingredient. Omit the salt for sweet dishes. It should brown /melt when heated. Some recipe ideas. Marinated goat's cheese: form the cheese into balls and smother with olive oil, fresh herbs, thyme, rosemary, crushed garlic, and spices, peppercorns, coriander, whipped. Leave out the herbs when making the cheese. Combine the fresh cheese with 2 tablespoons olive oil. Whip. Serve on crackers /bruschetta with olives. Cheesecake filling: combine unsalted goat's cheese with cinnamon, nutmeg, honey. Beat with creme fraiche and eggs. Rich cheese sauce: bring whipping cream to the boil, turn down the heat and whisk in goat's cheese. We ain't nothing but mammals. The milk from any mammal can be used for making cheese. Goat's milk has different proteins to cow's milk, which is why the curds will be smaller and weaker. The milk from water buffaloes contains triple the fat of cow's milk, which is why it makes the best mozzarella cheese. 27. Brunest: you will need equipment: large heavy pan or double boiler. Ingredients: 1 L milk, 1 L whey. Keep from another cheese recipe. 400 ml double cream. Making brunest. To make brunest cheese, you just need to combine all of the ingredients and evaporate a lot of the water. The tricky part is doing this without burning them. The milk, whey and cream need to be boiled for about 3 hours whilst they thicken. This can be done carefully in a large, heavy bottomed pan with regular stirring. Alternatively, you can make a double boiler by placing a round bottomed bowl over a large pan of water and then boil the water. This method takes a lot longer, but there is less chance of burning. The brunest is ready when it has turned brown and thickened. When it reaches the desired color, take it out of the pan /boiler and put onto a flat dish and allow it to cool. If it isn't already firm enough to shape, it should set as it cools. Extra information. Flavor: the flavor of the cheese will be affected by the cheese recipe used to create the whey. Does it have salt, acid or yogurt in it? All types of whey will create the distinct caramel flavor of brunest, but it might be slightly sharp if there is more acid in it, either from the addition of citric acid or the use of yogurt / buttermilk in forming the whey. Texture: the brunest will initially be spreadable but will firm up. It might become slightly grainy over time because, dependent upon conditions, the lactose sugar can form crystals. 29. Feta: you will need equipment: thermometer, cheesecloth, colander, saucepan. Ingredients: 2 L cow's milk, or 1.5 L cow's milk and 0.5 L goat's milk. 250 ml natural yogurt, 1 teaspoon cheese salt, regular salt for brine. A quarter tablet rennet, optional, a quarter of a teaspoon vinegar. Making feta cheese. 1. Dissolve a quarter tablet rennet in 60 ml cold water. You will only use half of this. 2. Heat the milk to 350 C, then remove from heat. 3. Add the yogurt and stir. Leave for 2 hours. 4. Reheat to 320 C, then remove from heat. 5. Add half the rennet solution and stir gently. 6. Wait, allow to stand undisturbed for 45 minutes. 7. Cut the curds into 1 cm cubes. 8. Wait, allow to stand for 20 minutes. 9. Ladle the curds into a cheesecloth-lined colander and allow to drain for 5 minutes. Then transfer curds and cloth to the cheese mold. 10. Leave overnight in fridge to drain. 11. Remove from the mold and cut the cheese into 4 pieces. 12. Sprinkle salt on all sides of each piece. 13. Leave at room temperature for 24 hours. Every few hours turn the pieces of feta and sprinkle more salt on any areas where the moisture has removed previous salt. 14. After 24 hours at room temperature, place the cheese uncoated on a plate in your fridge and leave for 3 days. 15. After 3 days, cut the feta into 1.5 cm cubes and eat. Alternatively, it can be preserved by placing in a jar and covering with brine. The brine can be made using anything between 2 and 6 teaspoons of salt per liter of water. 16. Mature, the feta will continue to improve for a few days. It can soften in the brine depending upon the strength of the curds that you created. This won't affect the flavor, but you'll need to be careful when you lift it out of the brine. Extra information. Traditionally, feta is made with used milk and has a very unique flavor. Our recipe gets very close to replicating the flavor, but there is a way to get even closer. The distinct flavor of traditional feta is due to high levels of fatty acids and acetic acid in the cheese. You can try and replicate this by sprinkling some vinegar over the cheese. After the final draining, sometimes this method will give your cheese a more distinctly feta flavor, sometimes it just makes it taste like vinegar cheese. 31. You will need equipment: colander, saucepan, thermometer, cheesecloth, slot. Teaspoon ingredients: 4 L whole milk, 2 teaspoons citric acid, 2 teaspoons salt. Making panna: 1. Dissolve 2 teaspoons citric acid in 60 ml of cold water. 2. Heat the milk to 880 C, being careful not to burn it. 3. Add the citric acid solution to the milk and stir gently. 4. Wait, allow to cool and settle for 10 minutes. You should have distinct, coagulated curds and yellowish whey. If not, then heat the milk back up to temperature and add a little more citric acid. 5. Drain, transfer the curds and whey into the cheesecloth placed inside a colander. Allow to drain until the whey is no longer running out. Sprinkle on the salt and mix into the curds. 6. Gather up the edges of the cheesecloth and give it a squeeze to remove some more whey, then tie it up into a bundle. 7. Press. Place the cheesecloth bundle onto a chopping board and place another board or a plate on top of it. Place approx 1 kilogram of weight onto the board and leave for 1 hour. At this point, stop pressing the cheese if you're making quinoa and skip to the making quinoa instructions. 8. For panna, increase the weight gradually over a few hours until mozzarella and burrata. Panna. Quinoa. You have approx 3 kilograms pressing the cheese. The cheese will be best after 3 to 4 hours of pressing. For quinoa, skip this stage. 9. Eat. This is a fresh cheese and is ready to eat immediately. It can Be stored in a fridge for up to 5 days. Making khina. Need: follow the above recipe until the first pressing stage. Remove the cheese from the cloth and gently squeeze and knead the cheese until you get a pliable consistency. Roll the cheese into golf ball-sized balls. It is now ready to eat. Khina is best eaten on the same day that it is made. We recommend making it into rasgulla as soon as it's finished. Extra information. Khina is great for making the traditional Indian sweet rasgulla. In fact, this is pretty much the best reason for making khina. Making rasgulla. Firstly, make a syrup with 1 cup sugar and 2 cups water. Add vanilla or cardamom and bring it to the boil. Switch off the heat. Lower the balls of khina into the syrup to warm them. Remove and sprinkle with coconut or chopped pistachios and eat. 33. Scottish crowdie. You will need equipment: thermometer, colander, cheese mold, slotted spoon, cheesecloth, saucepan. Ingredients: full recipe, 4L full-fat milk, 1 teaspoon citric acid, 1 teaspoon salt, 1/4 rennet tablet. Half recipe if pressing, 2L milk, 1/2 teaspoon citric acid, 1/2 teaspoon salt, 1/8 rennet tablet. Dissolve 1/4 tablet in water but only use half of the solution. Making Scottish crowdie. 1 rennet. Dissolve rennet in 60 ml of cold water. 2 acid. Dissolve 1 teaspoon of citric acid in 60 ml of cold water. 3. Heat the milk to 320 C. Stir gently to prevent scalding on the bottom. 4. Add the citric acid solution to the warm milk. Take it off the heat and stir gently for a few seconds, then allow to stand for half an hour. 5. Add the rennet solution and stir gently for a few seconds. 6. Reheat the milk to 400 C and let it sit at that temperature for 4 minutes. 7. Drain. Place a cheesecloth in a colander and place over the sink or a bowl if you wish to retain the whey. Ladle the curds into the colander and allow to drain for 20 minutes. 8. Salt. Sprinkle the 1 teaspoon salt over the curds. The salt serves 2 purposes. Firstly, it enhances flavor, and secondly, it draws moisture from the cheese. The amount of salt you use depends upon what you want to use the crowdie for. If it is for a sweet dish or you want a moister crowdie, then use less salt. 9. Decide. You now need to consider the texture you want from your crowdie. After 5 minutes it will have a spoonable texture, or alternatively transfer it to the cheese mold and leave for 1 to 2 hours to achieve a firmer texture. If you intend to press all of your crowdie, then you'll need to halve the quantities in order for it all to fit into the cheese mold. Extra information. For a smoother, creamier crowdie, then whisk it by hand. It can then be used for making crenachan. Making crenachan. Spread oats on a baking tray. Liberally sprinkle sugar, butter, maple syrup over the oats. Optional: dried cranberries, cinnamon, ginger. Cook in the oven until it just starts to color. Cool. Layer the oats with raspberries and Scottish crowdie. Top with fresh mint. Eat. 35. Rule cheese. You will need equipment: colander, cheese mold, saucepan, thermometer, cheesecloth, chopping board. Ingredients: 4L whole milk, 2 teaspoons citric acid, 1 teaspoon salt, herbs, parsley, mint, chive or chill, garlic. Making rule cheese. 1. Chop 2 cloves of garlic and fry to soften them. Finely chop the herbs and add to garlic. Add salt and pepper to taste. Put this mixture aside to use when rolling the cheese later. 2. Dissolve citric acid in 60 ml of cold water. 3. Heat the milk to 820 C. Stir to prevent the milk from sticking and burning on the bottom. 4. Acidify, switch off the heat and add half of the citric acid. Stir gently for a few seconds. 5. Wait for 15 minutes. If no curds have formed, add the remaining citric acid and leave for another 15 minutes. 6. Drain, tip out the curds and weigh into a cloth-lined colander. Allow to drain for 30 minutes, then break up the curd and mix with the salt. 7. Gather the edges of the cheesecloth and squeeze the curds to release more whey. 8. Press, place cheesecloth over a chopping board and spread the curds over it. Spread curds to make a rectangle approx 1 cm thick. Cover the curds with cloth, so it has cloth both above and below. Place a second board on top and weigh down with a 2 kg weight. For example, 2 cartons of orange juice. 9. Wait, leave for 10 minutes, you are pressing the cheese in order to shape it rather than remove more whey, which is why it is pressed for a much shorter time than with other cheeses. 10. Divide, you might find it easier to roll the curds in smaller amounts, so divide the curds in 2 smaller rectangles. 11. Sprinkle herbs and garlic over the surface of the cheese. 12. Roll by pulling the far end of the cheesecloth towards you. Take it slowly and the cheese won't break up. When you've formed the cheese into a Swiss roll of rule, remove it from the cloth and use your hands to firm it into shape. Any extraneous bits of cheese can be molded onto it. Then finish it off by sprinkling more herbs onto the board and rolling your cheese log over it. 13. Cool, place in the fridge and eat as soon as it's cooled down. 37. Creamy Cheshire. You will need equipment: thermometer, cheesecloth, cheese mold, saucepan. Ingredients: 1.5 L milk, 250 ml natural yogurt, or creme fraiche. 250 ml cream, a quarter rennet tablet, 1 teaspoon salt. Making creamy Cheshire. 1. Dissolve a quarter rennet tablet in 60 ml of cold water. You will only use half of the solution for this recipe. 2. Warm the milk, cream and yogurt, or creme fraiche, to 320 C. Making sure it doesn't catch and burn on the bottom. Remove the pan from the heat. 3. Add half of the rennet solution and stir briefly to fully distribute. 4. Insulate, place a lid on the saucepan and wrap it in a towel to help it keep at the correct temperature. 5. Wait, leave the pan undisturbed for 30 minutes. 6. Cut, check the curds are ready, then cut into 1 cm cubes. 7. Drain the curds by pouring into a colander lined with the cheese cloth. Because these curds have not been cooked, then they will be weak, so be careful not to break them up too much when you transfer them for draining. Allow to drain for 10 minutes. 8. Sprinkle with the salt and mix well with your hands. Don't add the salt too early. If you add the salt before most of the whey has drained away, then a lot of the salt will also be drained. 9. Squeeze out as much of the whey as you can, but don't apply too much pressure or the curds will squeeze through the cloth. 10. Keep the curds in the cloth and place into the cheese mold. 11. Press, keep the cheese at room temperature and add increasing Weights to the top of the cheese for the next 6–10 hours. You can do this by placing a jar on top and gradually adding more water to it. 12. Cool the cheese in the fridge. The cheese is ready to eat after the initial pressing but will continue to firm up if pressed for second day in the fridge. 13. Eat or mature. The creamy Cheshire cheese is ready to eat immediately. If you fancy making a more mature cheese and were scrupulous in your hygiene when following the recipe, the cheese can be aged for a few weeks. 14. Aging. Wrap the creamy Cheshire in a square of clean cheese cloth and place inside a sealed plastic tub in the warmest part of your fridge. The plastic container should be twice as large as the cheese to allow sufficient air to surround the cheese. Turn and check the cheese every few days. If there is any sign of surface mold, discard the cheese. 39. Queso Blanco. You will need equipment: colander, saucepan, thermometer, cheesecloth. Ingredients: 4 whole milk, 2 teaspoons citric acid, 1 teaspoon salt. Making Queso Blanco. 1. Dissolve citric acid in 60 ml of cold water. 2. Heat the milk to 820 C. Stir to prevent the milk from sticking and burning on the bottom. Switch off the heat when it reaches the correct temperature. 3. Add half the citric acid. Stir gently for a few seconds. 4. Wait, leave for 15 minutes. If no curds have formed, add the remaining citric acid. 5. Drain, tip out the curds and weigh into a cloth-lined colander and allow to drain for 30 minutes, then gently stir in the salt. 6. Gather the edges of the cheesecloth, tie up and hang to drain. 7. Wait, the cheese will be ready to eat in 1 hour. 8. Press, if you want a harder, drier white cheese, then remove half of the cheese from the cloth. Place the cloth with the remaining cheese into the cheese mold and place a weight on top. 9. Eat. Queso Blanco is best eaten fresh but will last for 5 days if stored in an airtight container in a fridge. Quark. You will need equipment: oven-proof dish, cheesecloth. Ingredients: 1 L milk, 500 ml cultured buttermilk, optional cream. Making quark. 1. Boil milk. 2. Cool the milk to room temperature. 3. Combine milk with the buttermilk. 4. Heat. Place the mixture in an oven-proof dish and warm in the oven at 50 C for 5 to 8 hours. 5. Drain. Strain the quark through a cheesecloth and keep the curds. The quark is ready to eat as soon as the whey has finished draining freely. The longer you leave it, the stiffer the quark will be. For the thickest quark, tie up the cheesecloth and hang for a day. 6. Optional, add a few tablespoons of cream to the quark for a creamer, looser quark called Sane quark. 7. Eat. 41. Marbled porter. This cheese has a very distinctive flavor and marbled coloration. You can make porter cheese with any dark beer or stout. The darker the beer, the more distinct the marbling effect will be. This nutty, sweet cheese tastes amazing on burgers. You will need equipment: saucepan, slotted spoon, cheesecloth, thermometer. Cheese mold. Ingredients: 250 ml stout, 2 L milk, 1 teaspoon citric acid, a quarter tablet rennet, 1 teaspoon salt. Making marbled porter. 1. Dissolve 1 teaspoon of citric acid in 50 ml of water. 2. Dissolve the rennet in 50 ml of water. 3. Heat milk to 300 C. 4. Remove the milk from the heat, add acid solution and stir. 5. Wait for 10 minutes, then bring back up to 300 C. 6. Drizzle half of the rennet solution over the milk and give it a quick stir. 7. Wait, leave the milk undisturbed for 30 minutes. 8. Cut the curds into 3 cm cubes. 9. Warm, slowly bring the temperature of the curds and weigh to 40 C. Then remove from the heat. 10. Warm the beer to 350 C. 11. Carefully use a slotted spoon to lift the curds into the warm stout. The more complete you can keep the cubes of curd, the better the marbling coloration will be. 12. Wait, leave for 5 hours. 13. Drain, line a colander with the cheesecloth and drain the curds. 14. Salt, sprinkle half the salt over the surface of the cheese. 15. Press, place the cheesecloth and curds into the mold and place a weight on top, approx 1 kilogram. After a few hours unwrap and turn the cheese, sprinkle the remainder of the salt over the top and press with 2 kilograms for a few more hours. The total pressing time for the cheese should be 5 to 10 hours. 16. Eat. The cheese is ready to eat immediately but can be kept for up to 5 days in the fridge. Extra information. Our original recipe used a whole bottle, 500 milliliters, of beer. But we decided it was better to drink half whilst making the cheese. 43. Help and support available online. www.cheesemonkey.co.uk